We note with great sadness the recent discovery of a large number of unmarked graves near the former Maryville Indian Residential School by the Cowessess First Nation. We honor the children who never came home, and our hearts go out to their families, all survivors of the residential school systems, and the Indigenous peoples and communities everywhere. The flags on campus have been lowered. Over the past few weeks, we have heard from many voices inside our university and from around Canada on the need to rethink and review the ways in which institutions like ours approach the question of Indigenous identity. We've also heard arguments about some shortcomings in Queen's recent practice. I want to say unequivocally that the university hears and understands these arguments, and that our aspiration is to address the question of Indigenous identity in a way that comes from and expresses the will of the Indigenous community itself. We see a different path forward. We know that questions have been raised about processes that have been followed in the past, about the way Indigenous identity has been factored into hiring and other internal processes, and that it may not have been done in a way that meets the real needs of contemporary Indigenous scholars, students, academics, and communities. But reconciliation is a process. The ways in which institutions like Queen's participate in the process of reconciliation is an ongoing journey, an evolution. Our engagement and commitment to Indigenous scholarship and consultation is a significant part of this. As a university that values diversity and equity, it is our intention to be transparent, open, and willing to learn so we can move forward together in a meaningful, collaborative way. We've already been involved in conversations on the subject, and we will increase the intensity and the robustness of our involvement. But to get to where we need to be will take time, intention, self-reflection, and concrete action. And I commit the university to all those things. I'm so pleased to welcome Chancellor-Designate Murray Sinclair to Queen's. His expert leadership and passion will be invaluable to guide our work as we move into the future.
Hello, my name is Murray Sinclair. Shortly I'm going to become the Chancellor of Queen's University. As I begin to prepare to take on this role, I recognize that Queen's is facing a critical moment in its history and its growth as well. And that has to do with the issue of identity politics, and the issue of those who are on staff or have been recruited, have been hired, and the hiring practices of Queen's University when it comes to appointing Indigenous people to staff. It caused me to reflect for a few minutes while I was thinking of what to say to you upon the fact that when I was growing up, being an Indigenous person was not something that everybody aspired to do and aspired to be. Even those of us who were Indigenous often worked very hard to deny our own identity. We would spend a lot of time trying to figure out ways to convince others that we were French, or we were Italian, or we were German, anything that would allow us to be able to escape the racism, escape the treatment, the behavior that people showed toward us, because once we identified and were known to be Indigenous, they would treat us differently and often treat us badly. Things have changed lately, largely because of the research that's been done, because of the statements that have been recorded from the survivors of residential school, because of the experiences that people have gone through with the hearings of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and other processes as well, which show that Indigenous people have a valid history, they have a valid identity, and that it's something that Indigenous people themselves have the right to be proud of. And Canada, too, recognizes that it has missed out on an important part of its history by denying so long the right of Indigenous people to claim, to practice their culture, to speak their language, and to be what they were meant to be. With the publication recently of a report that talked about the fact that Queen's University engaged in a process whereby they hired people which are alleged to have very little connection to the Indigenous community. Queens is now facing a bit of a crisis. My view is that I think we need to really look at the way that Queens has been hiring people, the way that they have been selecting people, the way that they have been going about the identification of the criteria that are to be used when they're appointing people to positions which call for knowledge about Indigenous cultures, Indigenous practices, and Indigenous communities. The one thing that I think it's safe to say about Queen's University is that its consultation with the Indigenous community remains to be desired, and its over-reliance upon self-identification, its over-reliance upon self-declaration is at the forefront of some of the issues that are currently before it in order to be addressed. One of the challenges which I accept is that as the incoming Chancellor, I will try to assist the university to turn this into an experience whereby we can not only develop an approach that works for Queen's University, but we can work with other institutions as well to talk about how we deal with the issue of inclusivity, diversity, while still being fair to those who are coming from that history that I talked about, a history of denial, a history of hiding, a history whereby their own sense of connection to the Indigenous community has been lost because of the oppression of laws, the oppression of policies, and sometimes the oppression from their own families. So I'm looking forward to engaging in conversations with the university. I'm looking forward to starting a conversation with other institutions. And I'm looking forward as well to hearing your views about what you think we should do about this. At the end of this video, you'll see a contact link that will allow you to be able to reach out and tell us what you think. And I'd really like to hear from you. Miigwech, thank you very much.